Happy Saturday night, everyone. As rare as it is for me to find a science fiction movie from the 70s or 80s that I have not seen, it's even rarer for me to find one that I've never even heard of. But that's the case with the next movie I'm going to review. It's called Goliath Awaits. It's from 1981. It was a made-for-TV movie, which may be one of the reasons that I never saw it. But the cast is absolutely phenomenal. It stars Mark Harmon, Christopher Lee, Eddie Albert, John Carradine, Alex Cord, Robert Forster, Frank Gorshin, Gene Marsh, um, John Mcintire, Emma Sams, John Ratzenberger, Duncan Regehr, and Kirk Cameron. And it was directed by Kevin O'Connor and written by Richard Bluell and Pat Fielder, and it's really, really excellent. It's a very strange movie about a ocean liner called the USS Goliath that is, or I should say RMS Goliath. It's a British ship that was torpedoed 3 days after England declared war on Germany. And they're heading towards the America, and they're torpedoed somewhere in the Atlantic, and the ship allegedly sinks. Well, 40 years later, a dive team discovers the wreckage of the Goliath, which is about 1,000 feet down, and it appears to be intact. And they do a dive, and one of the divers is played by Mark Harmon, whose name is Dr. Peter Cabot. He's an oceanographer. Here's what he thinks is Morse code coming from inside the ship. They're going, that's impossible. There can't be anybody alive in the ship after 40 years. And he hears it again, and he's in a submersible, an Alvin type bathysphere, and with him are a soldier named Commander Selkirk, who's played by Robert Forster, and Alex Cord plays Dr. Sam Malone's a doctor, and Selkirk knows Morse code and starts. He says, "They say, can you signal back?" He says, "Well, I'll try to remember." And he signals back, Goliath respond in Morse code. And at first, they just hear the SOS call; they don't hear anything else. And they think, maybe this is just something automatic somehow. And then it does respond. It says, Goliath 337 alive, atmosphere toxic, Mackenzie beware, and then it stops, and it just goes back to, and everything stops, even the Morse code. Well, they send a diver, and that's Alex Cord, down to explore the ship, and he has to wear very deep water gear because it's 1,000 feet down, and he's only got like a few minutes. And he sees what he thinks is a beautiful girl through a porthole, and she's dressed sort of in a 1920s kind of flapper dress, and that's Emma Sams. And then the porthole closes, and he reports this, and nobody will believe him, but they do believe him about they know about the Morse code. They communicate this to Eddie Albert, who's the admiral who is in charge of this recovery. Well, he hears about it, and he decides he's going to do a recovery mission. He's going to send more divers down to the wreck and see if it's true that there are survivors, and if they are, he's going to try and see if there's a way to get them up. Though of course it'll have to be done very slowly to avoid everybody getting the bends. They have to decompress from that pressure. They'll have to decompress for like a couple of weeks, really, very, very slowly. And so he gets this all together, and then he has a private meeting with Robert Forster and tells him, look, if there are survivors down there, I want you to see if you can find there was a senator named Senator Sam Matheson, and I want you to see if you can find Senator Matheson. And he was allegedly carrying a diplomatic pouch which was to be delivered only to the president, for FDR's eyes only. And the document in it, he says, is a forgery. It was forged by 2 Nazi agents to create, some sort of chaos. But we want you to find it, or better yet, destroy it. So he says, okay, I understand. They send the divers down in another one of these deep sea submersibles, and one of them goes in to try to enter through the torpedo hole, basically, and he ends up in swims inside, ends up in like an airlock pool, and somebody shoots him right through the faceplate. We don't see who it is exactly who shot him, and then another diver goes in and he just disappears. They report this back to the admiral, and the admiral says, he's got a big ship on the way, and they're going to try to mount a rescue operation of some sort. And they've got a ship that has decompression chambers for anybody who is rescued. Meanwhile, they send in a team of 4 divers, which is Mark Harmon, Alex Cord, Robert Forster, and John Ratzenberger, who plays a character named Bill Sweeney, and he's an expert diver. And so they show up, and they're met by Christopher Lee and a number of armed men, including Frank Gorshin, who are all dressed in sort of a retro style, including Christopher Lee has an old British, naval uniform on, and explains that he was the ship's 3rd engineer. His name is John Mackenzie, and when the ship sank, because it sank so slowly and in relatively shallow water, an air bubble formed. And although quite a number of people were killed, 337 or about 250 people were saved by going up into the upper decks of the ship where this air bubble existed. And then he figured out a way to basically create oxygen by using the ship had a second boiler, which was not damaged by the torpedo attack. And he was able to use that boiler to create a system that purified the air so that they could still breathe, although they're breathing only, I believe they said, something like 4% oxygen, and the rest is nitrogen, which is in fact physically possible. It's not something that would be very comfortable, but one could adjust to it over time. And again, they've had 40 years to do this. They've had births, obviously, which is why they're now up to 337, though birth is kind of controlled by this. They have sort of a governing board, Mackenzie at the head of it, that's allegedly elected by the people, though we don't know if that's really true. They're living in what appears to be at first something of a utopia. They dance, and they have these elaborate dinners, and everybody appears to be happy, but there's some kind of cracks that they start to see in the system. One of them is that this doctor, who's played by Jean Marsh, and she does a really, really great acting job, as she always did. And she's telling them that there's one, they're very healthy, but there's one disease that they haven't been able to conquer. It's something that they call Parker's disease, which seems to be an algae-based poison that somehow attacks people, and it seems to only rather conveniently attack people who have become disabled or who are very elderly or sick, and that they're particularly vulnerable to this. And it was named after the first person who died from it. And Alex Cord is talking to her about this. He doesn't quite believe what she's saying. He thinks she's lying about something, or that she's afraid of something, but he can't quite get her to admit to what that is. Then they start to tell these people about, I should mention, at first, when they first come aboard and they're welcomed, by Mackenzie, they're not attacked like the first couple of divers. There is an attack by this group that they call the Bow People. And one of them is the guy played by his name Duncan Regehr, who is named Paul Riker, and he is shot and injured. The others scatter after he's shot, and they say, well, "What's wrong with them?" They said, "Well, when the disaster occurred, some people tried to swim to safety, and of course they were affected by the bends. They came back and they were terribly injured, and some of their children are mutants, and that they disagree with the rule, as it were, of this guy John Mackenzie, played by Christopher Lee, and that they're trying to cause trouble, basically. And that's why they have security guards, who are led primarily by the Frank Gorshin character, whose name is Dan Wexler. And there's sort of a bit of a mystery about who exactly he is, because they tell the Admiral about what's going on. And Robert Forster rather, communicates with the Admiral and tells him what's going on. And he says, was there anybody on the ship's manifest named Wexler? And he looks it up, and there wasn't, and they don't know who he is. He says, well, he seems to have some pull with this Mackenzie. Wexler's kind of nasty. He doesn't like these new people, and he doesn't really want to hear what they have to say. They're telling them about, that it's been 40 years. It's now 1981, and, we won the war, and, Hitler was defeated, and everybody's, pleased with that. But they're telling him, also about the Cold War, and, that there's a lot of tension, and there's environmental damage, and the problems of the day. But he also says, we have a means to rescue you, and we are sending for a very large ship that's coming, and it's going to have decompression chambers, which you're going to need because when we take you back to the surface, you're going to have to decompress, and you're going to have to get used to breathing oxygen. He meets the daughter of Mackenzie, who is Emma Samms, whose name is Leah, and Mark Harmon's character is a little bit smitten with her, and starts, kind of becoming romantic with her, though she's not really very receptive at first. They go to a dinner, and she's feeding him this meal, and he says, "What is this?" And he's looking at something kind of black. She says, "It's octopus eyes." He's like, "Oh my God," And she says, "Oh, I'll get you something else. Don't worry." And they have a kind of a champagne or a wine that's made out of seaweed, and they're all drinking up, and they kind of make a face when they drink it. Obviously, it doesn't taste that good, at least to them. Another interesting character who is on this ship was an actor. It was supposed to be sort of like a Douglas Fairbanks kind of swashbuckling, sword fighting kind of actor, and he's played by John Carradine, and his name is Robert Duncan, and or I'm sorry, not Robert Duncan, Ronald Bentley. That's what it is, Ronald Bentley, and he's telling him about these kids still like they shows his movies, and he's like acting out the sword fights for them. They'll ask for his autograph, which is he's signing in squid ink. He says, "Oh, don't worry, it'll wash off, before dinner." But I thought that was kind of funny that they're asking for his autograph, and he's also wants to know about what happened in the world. They're asking him, Mr. Cabot and Dr. Malone are interested in how he saved people, and there's this room that he calls the life support room, where he's generating oxygen through this process that he describes to them. It's rather ingenious. I didn't quite understand it, but it has to do something with exchanging hydrogen, which they had supplies of for oxygen, and that it produces enough that they can breathe, though they are still mostly breathing nitrogen, because they had some supplies of it, and that was created in that air bubble. Well, again, they give them this idea that, if you want to, we can rescue you. Well, a number of the people don't actually appear to want to be rescued. They like this sort of closed society that they form, this little utopia, which it turns out is really a dystopia, because Mackenzie rules like with an iron fist, and nobody is really allowed to oppose him, and nobody wants to oppose him. And he asks, Robert Forster's character does meet with the senator, and who is played by John Mcintire, and his wife is played by Jeanette Nolan, of all people, and another person who was once an A-lister. And they're telling him, the diplomatic pouch was lost when the ship went down. Well, he conveys this information to Eddie Albert and the admiral, and says, they said the diplomatic patch was lost at that sea, but I don't believe him. I think he's lying about something. I think he's afraid of something. And they don't quite follow up on that until the end, and I'm not going to spoil that for people, because what it turns out that was in that diplomatic patch, Mackenzie actually has it. He has the letter, and he's opened it and read it, despite the fact that it said it was for the president's eyes only. What's in it is rather shocking, and I'm not going to spoil that for people who haven't seen it, because it's available on YouTube. And although the quality is rather poor, it's still very worth watching. Very well written, very well directed. Some great sets. It was shot mostly on the Queen Mary in Long Beach, the interiors. So it has that feel, which feels very authentic, of a British ocean liner of the period of the 40s. With the rich wooden appointments and everything, because again, that's the way the Queen Mary looked, and still looks. And again, the size is approximately the same too. It's supposed to be about 1,000 feet long. That's about how big the Queen Mary was. A huge ship. I mean, enormous. And if you just look at the propellers, like the size of a house, I was stunned when I saw the size of the propellers. And this was a big ship, and the plot is really interesting. There are a couple of twists and turns. Again, I'm not going to give away everything for people who haven't seen it. It turns out that Frank Gorshin's character is very, very devious, and is doing things that he thinks are basically to protect Mackenzie's rule over these people, and he's actually going way, way over the line. And Mackenzie sort of acts like he's not aware of something. I think it's implied that he actually was sort of aware of some of the things that Frank Gorshin has been doing, which up to and including murder. And I think that in the end, he reveals the contents of the telegram to Mark Harmon, who wants to leave with Leah, his daughter. At first, she doesn't want to go, and then finds out that Mackenzie, has sabotaged the ship. The ship arrives from the ship that they're on is called British Enterprise 4. That's going to rescue everybody, and they put it to a vote. Who wants to go and who wants to stay. A number of people want to stay, but quite a number more want to leave, and they're letting them leave. Frank Gorshin tries to stop them. He's actually trying to shoot people as they're leaving, because he doesn't want anybody. He tells the security guards, nobody is to leave this ship alive. That's the way Mackenzie wants it. Well, that's not actually true, but he tells them that, and so they attack them. But the bow people come to their rescue, particularly Paul Riker, and shoots, or actually it's Mark Harmon who shoots Wexler, and he is mortally wounded. He goes up to find Mackenzie, and basically confesses everything that he's done on his behalf, including trying to kill the people who are leaving. And he says, "My God, do you know what you've done? Now they'll come down here with guns and start shooting people." And he says, "What have you done?" And he tells him all the things that he did, including euthanizing old people, and using this horrible Parker's disease to inject people on purpose, not as an accident, and keeping the population down. Jean Marsh also confesses to Alex Cord that she was aware of this and she was part of it. And she said, it started with my father, and he passed it on to me, and I didn't want to do it at first, but we couldn't. There were only so many mouths that we could feed, and there wasn't anything I could do. And obviously feels rather guilty about it, but there's nothing. So she decides she's going to stay. She can't live with the guilt, and she can't go up to the service and admit that she was part of this. And Alex Cord, who has started to kind of fall in love with her, despite the fact that he tells her that he's married and has 3 kids, understands, and he's going to let her. Also, one of the everybody's helping people to get off the ship, including the John Carradine character, and he tells Alex Cord again that he wants to stay. And he says, "Well, why? You can live." He says, "You tell people. You told me that they will still watch my old movies on TV. That's the me I want them to remember. The young swashbuckling actor. I don't want them to see me now as this old codger who can't really do these things anymore. I want them to remember me the way I was. He says, every great actor knows when it's time for his exit, and this is time for mine. But he goes ahead and helps people, to get into their dive suits and get up to the submersibles that are coming to take them up. Very tense ending where they, like I said, Leah doesn't want to leave her father, and even to the fact that he goes and sabotages the life support room and knocks off all the oxygen valves, so the oxygen pressure is going to build up to the point where the Goliath is going to explode, because the amount of oxygen will mix in with the nitrogen and cause an explosion, and it'll destroy the ship. And finally, Mark Harmon convinces her to leave, and as he's leaving, Mark Harmon says, he says, you don't know anything about me. He says, I know you're a murderer. He says, oh, really? Do you know what's in that diplomatic pouch? What was in that letter? And he tells him. And again, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but again, it's very shocking. And I think Eddie Alpert was lying, that it was not, what was in the letter was not written by two Nazi agents. It was actually a real diplomatic communication. But even despite that, so he says, you go with him, and to his daughter and to Emma Samson. And she says, okay, and she goes with him, and they're like going down to the last minute. Eddie Albert is shouting over the microphone, lift the ship. That's an order. You'll be court-martialed. And they're holding off until they can get them on board. Paul Riker at the last minute dives back. He's been rescued, but he dives back to help them get them back on board, and they succeed, and then they lift, and everybody's going up to the surface. And Mark Harmon had been telling Leah about the sun and the blue sky and what it looks like, on Earth, because they've never been there. They've only been on the Goliath. And she sees the sun and says, my God, it's beautiful. And that's kind of the end. Everybody was rescued, and then the Goliath explodes and kills all the people who elected to stay, including Mackenzie. Really quite a good movie, and I really enjoyed it. Again, like I said, it was a made-for-TV movie. Apparently, it was broadcast in 2 parts in November 1981, November 16th and November 17th. I do not know what network it was shown on, but I never saw it, and I never even heard of it. But really very well worth watching. Again, Goliath Awaits, and it's available on YouTube for free.